4 equity webinar series that we have with Dr. Andrew Campbell. And joining us this evening are teachers, vice principals, superintendents, educational assistants, ECEs, admin assistants, as well as our associate director will be joining us today. So this is a very exciting time for our board as we move toward the equity, diversity, and inclusion work that we are doing. This evening's session will focus on dismantling deficit thinking in our schools. And as we journey through this next 4 webinars, regardless of where you are on this journey, we welcome you and you are at the right place. So in terms of our land acknowledgement, we are gathered virtually today and we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands and waters of the Algonquin people who left their footprint on Mother Earth long before us. We recognize their longstanding relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. This acknowledgement should not function as a closure, resignation, or acceptance of the past or present, but should spark a desire to learn about the true history of this country and provoke thought, reflection, and positive change. And as we gather and unite in prayer, we call to mind our Muslim brothers and sisters who are mourning. And for all those who mourn this evening, we pray. May the God who created the world of diversity and vibrancy go with us as we embrace life at its fullness. May the Son who teaches us to care for strangers and foreigners go with us as we try to be good neighbors in our communities. May the Spirit who breaks down our barriers and celebrates community go with us as we find the courage to create a place to welcome all. And I am happy to welcome Dr. Andrew Campbell, also known as DR.ABC, our recent OCSB Champion Educator Award recipient. Congratulations. Most of you know him from our previous sessions that we've been involved with. And Dr. Campbell is a graduate of the University of Toronto with a PhD in Educational Leadership, Policy, and Diversity. He is a faculty member of the teaching program at U of T and is the adjunct assistant professor at Queen's University. Dr. Campbell is an Ontario certified teacher. He has been an educator for over 25 years in countries such as Jamaica, Bahamas, and Canada. He has authored 2 books, Teachable Moments with DR.ABC, A Spoonful for the Journey in 2015, and the Invisible Student in the Jamaican Classroom in 2018. His research and scholarship focuses on equity, diversity, inclusion, racism, anti-Black racism, cultural competence, education leadership, 2S LGBTQ+ issues, and teacher performance evaluation. Dr. Campbell continues to present at various peer-reviewed academic conferences across North America and the Caribbean. He is a workshop facilitator, a motivational speaker, and has delivered several keynotes. Dr. Campbell appreciates fashion, as you all could tell from our previous sessions with him. He enjoys traveling and meeting new people, and equally finds pleasure in bringing his community together to enjoy a great meal. Over to you, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good evening, I guess, everyone. And if you have friends who are joining us and they are running late, that is fine. Tell them that's fine. They come in. Once they click on and log in, we will be able to let them in the room. Someone you know is out there saying, oh, I didn't register, I didn't get the link. It's fine. Send them the link now and let them join us. It's about a conversation that we are all going to have as we get into it. And this is a speaker series, so it's not a workshop. It's a speaker series, but we're going to get a lot from this continued conversation. So I want to say a pleasant good evening again to everyone. Thank you so much for your welcome. Thank you so much for just the energy that is placed in the room. The session is being recorded and will be shared by tomorrow morning with everybody else who is absent and everybody else who couldn't get an opportunity to engage. I also want you to let you know that the chat is open. It's not closed. We did that very intentionally, that you can comment with each other. Well, not in private, but in a group chat to talk, to share If you have something to say, you need to add to something, you need to lend your voice, which we really want to happen. We want that to happen. That is a part of the process. So we're here talking about first in our speaker series, and something that Mena pointed out that I want to underline. She said, wherever you are in the journey, we're at different places in the journey. I could tell you stories of places people are at the journey where teachers and educators have been doing this work, and they're finally happy that other persons are finally joining. We are at places where some schools are so way ahead. And then we have places where people are denying. People are literally denying that the number 215. People are denying Columbus. They're denying so many things. They are not even started on the journey. And so wherever you are on this journey, there are four things I want you to know as we start this conversation. You are here to learn. I am here to learn. Every time I walk away, I learn something. The last time we met together, you know how much I was impacted by that land acknowledgement, Mena. I talked about it for days afterwards. I learned something in that session, and I was the presenter. That is how school is. If as an educator, you are not learning from your kids, you are not learning from the families, you are not learning from the community, then something is wrong. Something is wrong, absolutely wrong. And so we want to engage in learning. We want to engage in unlearning. There are things we learn that we need to unlearn, especially when it comes to deficit thinking. One of the questions I always ask, I always said, what did you learn growing up about Black people? What did you learn growing up about Indigenous people? What did you learn growing up about those people over there and those people down there and those people across the street? We learned things. We learned to hate. We learned those things. Those things are things that we learn. And that is why I say to you, we have to unlearn. We have to unlearn. And next word I like to use is the word unwire. Now, people ask me, Dr. Campbell, what's the difference between unlearn and unwire? It's my word, so this is what I consider unwiring to be. The things that were automatic, the things that we were forced to learn. Let me give you a perfect example of what that looks like. I grew up in Jamaica. I never had a Muslim neighbor, never had a Muslim friend, never had anybody who I know was Muslim. I went to America to teach in 2001. And I was in the bank Monday morning when the plane went to the second tower on September the 11th. Immediately after that, we were wired to whenever we see an hijab, whenever we see a hijab, whenever we see somebody that we think or we assume or we kind of figure out is Muslim, we immediately learn how to be afraid, how to be scared, how to pair it with terrorism, how to pair it with danger. We have to unwire that. It's so wired in us. We have to unwire that. And I'm going to leave it to you one of the words I didn't plan to leave with you today. You know, I like to leave words. One of the words I didn't plan to leave, but I'm going to leave it, is relationship. We have to learn to build relationships. You know, this idea of laying flowers down in London this evening and laying flowers at the residential school and marking 215 seconds and hours and minutes and doing all kind of stuff. Let me make it clear for the record. Andrew Campbell, that's me. I am all for it. I am all for it. I changed my background the other day to orange. I wore an orange shirt, for an occasion. I'm all for it. But if what you do stays at symbolism and these little performances, then you are going to be in trouble. It's inauthentic. It's not going to lead to anything. I want you to start with yourself, to thinking, what can I do? How do I communicate? Somebody said something on Twitter the other day that moved me. The person said, just want you all to know that young man who murdered the Muslim family, he was in somebody's grade 8 class a few years ago. I don't know why she said grade 8. I don't know if she's a grade 8 teacher or what, but it touched me. She just said he was in somebody's class. And I can remember how many times I get letters from parents even now that tell me about their children and the impact I had on their children. And that is my dream, to continue impacting the world and people's children. I want when you leave my class, you say, Miss, I love Mr. Campbell. I love Mr. Campbell. That is what I'm working for. Absolutely what I'm working for. That kids and my students love, respect, and appreciate the space that I create for them. So when you throw around words like belonging and equity and diversity and safe space, I don't get very impressed with those words, and I use them more than you. Let me take responsibility. I use them more than you. But let me make it very clear. Without the action behind the word, without the learning, the unlearning, the rewiring, the relearning, without the relationships, we are doing nothing. And so I want, at our first session this afternoon, we want to talk to a room full of powerful people, teachers who can make and break. And we want to talk about disrupting deficit thinking in our schools. And it's what we just talked about. What is deficit thinking? What really is deficit thinking? It is that idea that whatever is different is less than. Whatever is different from the norm has no value. And that is why we question immigrants and we question people who identify differently in many ways, whether it's religion, whether it's sexuality, whether it's race. We question that. We question their value. Many of us, including myself, over the years, I've had to say things and to do things to make sure you saw my value. Because we know showing up in black skin, you would have lost some of your value. Showing up with indigenous symbols, you'd have lost your value. Showing up with, when you and I were unsure of their sexuality, you would have lost their value. Showing up without certain things that we consider normal. And we consider the norm and what considered to be standard, they lose their value. So because of the low persistence of low expectation and deficit thinking, it's evidence in our classroom. I've heard tons of stories about streaming. Tons of story about streaming. It's so many stories. The ideologies that impact our students' identity and belonging. We love to talk about belonging. It affects how they are offered and what they are offered. The lament that we don't have our tools. We have tools. You are the most important tool. And so I want to take a look at this picture. I'm going to show you maybe 2 or 3 cartoons. The first one I'm showing you is this one. And I want you to look at what you see in front of you. What you see in front of you is a child and a parent. And they're speaking their truth and they're saying, hey, unemployment, hunger, that's what I'm experiencing. But I want you to look what the cartoonist did in the background. In the background, the cartoonist deliberately put persons in suit, which talks about power and authority, the ability to make and break and do changes. And I want you to see the conversation they are having in the background. It's in deficit. It's in deficit. It's in deficit. The conversation we see in the background is in deficit. I want to tell you another story. I'm a storyteller. I'm sure you have heard. If not, welcome. I do tell quite a bit of stories, but the stories you will understand is why I think I'm a good teacher, because our stories really last and we get to teach and tell people our stories. It's funny. This next week, I'm doing a presentation for a school. A number of students, maybe about 50 classes of 20 students, maybe about 2,000 students. And the topic is our story, your story, my story. We're going to weave all of the belonging and the equity and the diversity and the inclusion in it, but we're talking about the power of telling your story. And so your stories are important. When I was a young teacher, and I know you're saying, oh, Dr. Campbell, you're so young. What do you know about being a young teacher? Well, I've been teaching for 25 years. So now I give away my secret. Good grace, good God, and I moisturize. I'm not as young as I look, okay? And I remember in those days we streamed, and I was in a school that was a big school, and we had 6 shifts. We had 6 shifts, 6 stream of each classes, grade 1, grade 2, right up to grade 6, and we had 6 levels of those classes, 6 levels. And what I want to let you know was that we streamed our students from class A to F, so A, B, C, D, E, F. And so we stream our kids. I want you to understand that when a child comes in that school like that, and a child is in 6C or 6D or 6E or 6F, you don't have to tell them they are in 6F and 6C. They know The many indicators in the building says to them, you are in the lowest stream. You are the one we don't really recognize and care for. And you may say, Dr. Campbell, we do care. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of history and story out there that talks about, streaming and the impact of our students. And just imagine how those children felt being in grade 6, D and E and F. They know they were at the end. They knew they had no chance. They knew they were not being considered for any promotion, any position, any involvement. They knew. And that was all because of deficit thinking that we placed upon them. The next cartoon we have quickly as we move along is that we see all the issues. And I love this cartoon because it's an honest cartoon. It talks about all the issues in our school. It really calls out the issues. It's an honest cartoon. It calls out all the issues within our schools. But my concern is, why is dadless? Why is dadless situated as a problem alongside with things like hunger and homelessness? Does the teacher label our students as problems, or are they already constructed that way? Questions we're asking ourselves today. Questions we're asking ourselves today. How do the labels come to define the students? Who or what is the root of the problems? And how does the teacher perceive her role in teaching these students? That brings us to the definition of deficit thinking. Deficit thinking is a common way of thinking which affects our general way of being in and constructing the world. Differences from the norm are immediately seen as being deprived, negative, and disadvantaged. It never questions, and this is what I love about it, it never questions the legitimacy of what is considered to be normal. Or does it consider that differences may actually go beyond expected norms? It discourages, and this is where it gets tricky. It discourages teachers and administrators. Welcome to all the principal and the vice principals in the room. Do not miss our leadership session. It's going to be a lunchtime session. Don't miss it. I'm going to speak to you like you are leaders. Get ready. Because you are powerful more than you know. You are powerful more than you profess. You are powerful more than you pretend to be. And I want to remind you as principals and vice principals and leaders and superintendents that your role is to be a change agent. You said it in your master's. You said it in your PhD. You said it in your courses. I want us to do it. We are change agent. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that later on. So as we're thinking about this work of deficit thinking, I want to bring the first piece from that slide into the conversation. And it said, differences from the norm are immediately seen as being deprived, negative, and disadvantaged. And I'm going to kind of rush to a slide because I really want to get to a slide in a minute. I'll get to it. But I want you to realize that when our students come to our spaces, they enter with certain knowledge about them by us. We know the good old days of you showing the next teacher who is getting your students all about, their file. I have been there. I have been there where teachers have said to me, oh, you're going to get Shan. You're going to get Nicole. Oh, be prepared for her. Oh, she does this and she does that. And they go on and on. And the truth is, sometimes they are right. And I see your comment in the box, Allison. I see your comment. Remember, the box is for all of us. Type it in the box. Share your comments. Write along. You will never distract me with a comment. What you're doing with the comment, you're enhancing the space. It's not an innocent classroom. Thank you for that. We are all guilty of it, including Andrew Campbell. That's me. And so we pile up ourselves with all of this. I don't think I've told this. I think I've told the story once, and I just feel the need to share it. I'm going to share something with you. How we can get caught and how we have to be very careful. I don't know how in your board you place the students for the next school year, but when I was working at the TDSB, we do this thing where first time I experience it because I'm an LTO, You put all the classes for next year on a big sheets of paper in the staff room. It's lined with poster papers, and every child name is written on a sticker. I don't know if you do it at your school, and the stickers are color coded. Stickers are color coded, and we put them there. And so I had an amazing class. I had a really amazing class that year, and I was cheering up my students for the next school year. And I remember we walked in, and the teachers were saying, my camera is frozen, right? I think we're having a load shedding here. I'm going to turn off my camera for a little bit as well. Can we turn off our cameras, everybody, so we can maybe, can you hear me, Mena? Are you hearing me clearly? Just want to make sure.
We can hear you, but it's a bit glitchy sometimes. Sometimes you're cutting in and out.
Right, so I'm going to turn off my camera. I'm going to ask everybody to do the same so we can preserve some of that pressure on it's dragging. I'm not sure why it's dragging. All right, let's continue. You keep me posted, please, in the chat, if anything, Mena, please. And so we are placing the students on the list, you know, where they're supposed to go. And a teacher came in, a couple of teachers came in, and they was like, oh, you put your students in the new teacher class? Give us those students. Like, I had some amazing students. And so we took them out and we put them on the teachers we know class. And the teacher who is going to be the new teacher, or for September, we don't know that, you know, that unknown class, we place the students, other students there. I left the school, and it so happened that in September, I was hunting down again as usual for my next LTO, and the school called me back for the LTO. I want you to guess which class I got. I got that class with the unknown teacher. That was the class I got, where we didn't put the amazing students in. And I learned that lesson, but I was open to learning the lesson, because the students who are not the best, Mr. Campbell now had all of them. And I had to make sure by the end of that school year, they became the best, all because of sometimes we have deficit thinking about how we do things. So I want us to understand that deficit thinking discourages teachers from recognizing, as we said, the positive values of certain abilities, dispositions, and actions. We have to realize our students do not come to our schools as blank slates. Find out who they are. Find out what they bring. Find out what they come with. Find out. We have to learn to build better relationships. Too often, we realize a year after, 2 years after, oh, this child speaks 5 languages. This child was a ballerina at our school. This child, because we don't take the time out to learn our students. We want to make sure we do that in intentional ways. And this is what we saw. We saw this, where the students are seen as a laundry list of problems. Are you one of those teachers listening that consider your students a laundry list? Whoa, I'm going to get those kids next year. Those kids. And it's a laundry list. And many times what happens is that you give up. I am not saying we don't have difficult, quote unquote, students. I'm not saying they're not challenges. I'm not saying that you have not been in a classroom where there are kids on different level of the reading level, kids in grade 1 level, 4 level, 3 level. I don't say you don't have all of that. But what is your approach? If your approach is deficit, if your approach is already defeatist, if that is your approach where you already finished before you even started, then what you're doing here is blaming your students. You're blaming your students. You know, as they said here, they turn blame. They turn the blame on their students. And now you are not learning because you didn't eat breakfast. You are not learning because your parents are working too much. You are not learning because your parents are disinterested or uninterested in education. You are not learning because your mom didn't return 2 of my phone calls. You are not learning because you don't have the best laptop, and I ask you to buy the best laptop on the best device and download everything. You are not learning because you are constantly 10 minutes late. You're missing out. Even the way we tell a student they are consistently late, we do it in deficit. I have learned over the years how to tell a student they are consistently late. I would say to them, you know, I keep missing you, right? You're missing out on all the good stuff. I keep missing you. I want you to get all the good stuff. You know, so even your approach is not blaming them, because when you get to know them, you get to realize a lot of our students are going through stuff. And there comes my big magic word. Here comes my big magic word: relationships. Connect to their student. Do we build relationships? Are we building relationships? I'm sorry about the glitching. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to really, this is maybe the second time this has happened to me in a week. Never happened before. I'm sure many of you have been in workshop with me. I'm not sure what's going on, but I know it's not your system. It's something over my side. I'll really try to remedy that. Right. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm very, very excited about how we are working to build relationships. How are we doing that? How are we intentionally building relationships? What are our plans to build relationships? Think about it. I was in a school once where a principal literally designated the entire first week of school. She designated the entire first week of school to get to know our students. I've never been in a school like that before. She said no teaching the first week of school. Spend quality time having lunch with your students, picnic with your student, taking walks with your student, extra play time with the student, story time, watching a movie together. The first week of school. And then she asked us to have what she called fireside chats with them. I will never forget that. Never forget that. Every one of us, many of us was kind of, what is this? Because she was new. What is this she's coming with? By about Wednesday of that week, we had the aha moments. One of the things that came out of that situation, I will tell you, is that we had a school where about 70% of the students were Asians. And what happened was that they were very troubled and upset and dissatisfied with the fact that we consider them all to be Chinese. It was a prevailing problem in the school. And they would tell you, in getting to know them, everybody got some of the same response. The Korean child, the Vietnamese child would say to the student, the Japanese child would say to this child from Singapore would say to the student, to the teacher, I am not Chinese. And they would say that was part of their problem. We speak to all of them as if they were Chinese. I love that Jennifer's comment said, there's such a child, this is a challenging issue, reminding staff that families are not keeping their perfect children at home. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And we have to work with all our students, create a space of belonging, create a space of ability, create a space of hope. That is why we come to school. School is a refuge. For those who don't know, school is a refuge. And if you didn't realize that, the pandemic has taught us that. School is a place of refuge. All the mental health issues, all the doing out, all that is going on is because they are not in schools. They are not in school. School is a place of refuge. And they're losing that. So deficit thinking leads to stereotyping and prejudging. It marginalizes certain people on the basis of misinformation and misconstruction. Now, here comes a very important part of the conversation. Where are you on the cultural competence continuum? Where are you on the cultural competence continuum? How do you see yourself? Where are you? Where are you? This is not a question for the board. This is not a question for the group of us in the room. This is not a question for the trustees and the superintendents to answer. This is an individual question. And if you're with us and you are an office administrator, if you're a janitor, wherever you are, and I hope you are here, EAs, SNAs, whatever you are, even the paraprofessionals, the linguist specialists, special education persons, whoever you are joining us and listening to us, I want you to ask yourself, where am I on the cultural competency continuum? Am I at a place of cultural destructiveness? I'm at a place of cultural incapacity, cultural blindness. Am I there? Because when you are stuck there, and I can tell you, there are many teachers who are there, It comes out in every single thing you do. I don't know how you think we're smart, that we could be culturally blind. We could be culturally incapacitated. We could be racist. We could be having white supremacist attitude and ideologies and think it won't come out in our teaching. It comes out. It comes out in our teaching. So we want us to get to the places of cultural pre-competence, cultural competence, cultural sensitivity, and lead us to cultural proficiency. This is an entire talk we have, and that I think it's a part of what we're going to discuss. How do we get to stages and spaces? How do we grow? How do we move? How do we move from one place? How do we grow in cultural competence? Think about our students. What is in their knapsack? I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop that for a minute. And I want us to take a minute and jump in the chat, everybody. Jump in the chat. And I want to ask you a question. Type in the box for me, everybody. What is in their knapsack? What is it that our students are coming to us with? Go ahead and just type. What is in their knapsack? What are those things that they are coming to us with, I should say? What are in their knapsack? What are those things they are coming to us in? Just share and type in the chat. I want everybody to see what is in their backpack. What are those things in their backpack? What are those things in their backpack that they are coming to us with? That we have to now understand how to deal with, how to share, how to grow, how to learn, how to take them to a place. What are those things? What are those things? I see them. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Mark O'Connor. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Christine. Ooh, the family expectation is big. But I also love that we are not only putting the negative things, there are also positive things in the chat. But they come to us with a lot. They come to us with a lot. I'm going to show you on the screen. Take a quick minute to look at the screen as you see the screen. This was listed by the Ontario School Librarian Association. These are some of the things in their backpack. Take a minute to look at the things in their backpack. Take a minute to look through it. Look at those things in their backpack. I want us to realize our students are coming to us with all of this. And there's no escaping that, well, when this is over, I'm going to teach good. If you're one of those teachers who are waiting that when this is all over, when this is all gone, I am going to teach well, that is not true. That's not true. That's not true. It's not going to happen. We have to teach well now with all that is happening. But here's a beautiful part of this assignment that they did. I want to show you another beautiful part of the assignment. If we were doing a workshop, or when we get to do this workshop, what happened was that they were asked to take one thing that was negative and look at all the possibilities. And I want you to realize that they were teachers. I love this one. Isolation and loneliness. When our students come to us with isolation and loneliness, how do we take care of that? And these are teachers' ideas. They had many more ideas, but we didn't get to list them all. So what I love about this session, look at this one, the economic insecurity. These are solutions, you know. I want you to realize that we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. At the bottom down here, you see this one about keeping the library open after school hours. That was a major, major conversation we had, because I remember stories about that. When one teacher made a difference. One teacher made a difference. One teacher moved the needle from deficit, and she moved that needle into a place of strength. So I want you to really realize what we are doing, what is in their knapsack. Deficit thinking can be seen in many ways. I really want to take a minute to read that for you. I want to take a minute to read that for you. Deficit thinking can be seen in many ways. Deficit thinking can be seen in many aspects of our schools, in our curriculum, teacher hiring practices. support programs, ESL classrooms, the ways in which we provide accommodations and modifications. We have to be careful. We have to be careful. Yesterday, I had a pleasure in a class that I teach at the University of Toronto. I had one of my white students, the pleasure of listening to her present on how do we disrupt the white savior mentality. It's powerful. Her work was powerful. Even when we help, we have to be careful that we don't help and allow people to feel they're always in deficit. And the only way they are going to survive is because we have given them something. And that's why I love what you said, Carol. They bring their passion. Melanie, they bring their interest and their passion. So I want you to list the negative things. Don't think I didn't want that. I absolutely want that. Thank you, the trauma. But they also bring other things. They bring joy. They bring experience. They bring slippers language. I remember when I was being a reading specialist, we talk about the slippers language. They bring that to the school. So what is it? How do we make sure that our students understand and know that we see them? So when we're going to go back, we're going to go back to 4 things to dismantle. Why we need to dismantle. 4 things. We're going to get into 4 things in a minute. Deficit thinking oversimplifies students' vast experiences. Deficit thinking focuses on students' perceived shortcoming. Deficit thinking also focusing on language that further oppresses. Deficit thinking undermines. We want you to understand this is what deficit thinking does. So let's get back into that. Let's get back into that. I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm going to share my screen again. Let's get back into that. So we want to talk about these 4 things. Take a picture of this slide, please. As a matter of fact, I hope I didn't tell you that at the beginning, but you have permission to take a picture of any slide. And I know many of you have already noticed that in the sidebar of all my slides, the word there is strength. It's intentional. I want us, as we are discussing deficit thinking, we are describing and thinking about the ways we are going to disrupt. The ways we are going to disrupt. The ways we are going to disrupt. Deficit thinking oversimplifies students' vast and heterogeneous experiences. All our students are not from the same space. They are not from the same place. They don't come to us with the same experiences. But I love this picture for a reason. And I'm sure you have seen it before, but you're going to see it many more times. Why I love this picture is because all of them, they have a box. Every one of our students, we're trying to help. But I want you to realize, look at that. Look at the situation. No matter how we're helping, there are students who are not getting the opportunity. And I know somebody's saying, so Dr. Campbell, what can I do? You have seen it, even in the picture. You get it. You get it. I have given everyone a box. And that is the problem. You have given every single student a box. You have given every single student the same box. We have to remember, we are not trying to work with equality. We have realized through our own knowledge and learning as educators that that does not work. We are moved on from equality. We are learning about equity, giving each other what they need, giving our students what they need. But I'm going to also touch on something else, our colleagues, what they need. Because we do have deficit thinking in the workplace, in the staff room, in the school. I'll tell a story of when I came to Canada and I was a substitute teacher. I mean, we know substitute teachers need help. There ain't no question about that. We know that if you're new like me from Jamaica and you're just teaching a Canadian school, you need help. Oh, 100% I needed help. And I've been given help by teachers that today we are friends. We are friends because they helped me but they saw that there was something special about me. They was like, you're new, but there's something about you, but you're new. They sense that I was passionate. They sense I love teaching. They sense I was an award-winning teacher. Before I came to Canada, I was Teacher of the Year more than once in two different spaces. And they helped me. I remember the first time getting help on report cards. I was helped by about three teachers, white teachers. Today, they are my friends. And I know you might say, Dr. Campbell, why you say white? When we continue our conversation, we are going to have conversation about color, because a lot of us think it's safe when we don't say color. We need to talk about color. We need to talk. We must see color. That's a problem we have right now. We didn't see our Muslim brothers and sisters. We didn't see First Nation indigenous. We haven't seen. Many persons are not seen. They do not belong. So when I use white or use certain things, it's intentional for us to understand nothing is wrong. Absolutely nothing is wrong. So I want us to understand. I want us to understand these 4 reasons why we need to disrupt and dismantle. Why we need to disrupt and dismantle this prevailing idea of deficit thinking in our schools. It oversimplifies. It oversimplifies. It's not that simple. We have to spend time. I teach at the university level. I answer at least 1 email per day from a student seeking an extension, seeking an accommodation, seeking to explain something, seeking to me to share. And at one point, I used to be like, oh, Lord, here we go again. Until something struck me. I used to go to meetings, even at the university, and I realized that a student name would come up, and nobody knows the story except me. And I go, why do I know the story? Why do I know their business? And then I realized something, everybody. They trusted me to share. I would get evaluation that says, thank you, your class felt a space I could share. And my students do well. We have this, I'm going to use the word nasty. We have a nasty habit of thinking that when we accommodate, it's always deficit, and the person we accommodate has nothing and nothing. They can't survive without us. And so they have no value. And so, you're just letting them slip by. You give them that B so they could slip by. When you accommodate the right way, people excel. When you accommodate the right way, people excel. Thank you, Jody, for sharing that. When you accommodate the right way, people excel. And Jody says in the box, deficit thinking deflects accountability from us. The next one. Deficit thinking focusing on students' perceived shortcomings. We talk about this. Maybe that's what you sense coming, Jody, and you said it. And so we are focusing on our students' shortcoming. We're focusing on their shortcoming. But I want to show you something, why I love this picture. And if you stick around with me for all the sessions, you're going to see this picture maybe 5, 6, 7 times. You know why? Because I want you to look at the test that was given to the students in the picture. There are students in our school that don't stand a chance of winning. Based on what we decide success is gonna look like, and how we plan to accommodate success, they will never grow in strength. The fish here has no chance. I don't think the penguin has a chance. I don't think this elephant has a chance. We have to be careful about what we're doing. And when you hear a lot of terminologies, I can't wait to have a session where we can talk about some of the vocabulary and the language. When you hear people talk about decolonize, it's a reason. It's saying we have to move away from what we consider to be the only way. And that's why we talk about decolonizing the curriculum and decolonizing our pedagogy. Decolonizing. Deficit thinking focuses on language that further oppresses. Some of you talked about this in your contribution. Disadvantaged students, marginalized students, vulnerable students, minority students, those boys, those students from the building, those from that area, difficult students, inner city students, the risks, the gaps, the aging. We have to be careful about the language. We have to work on language. All of us have to work on it. Sometimes we don't have any other language because that's what we have been given as educators. We have to create new words. I'm sure many of you didn't know about BIPOC until last year. It's not a word, by the way. I hope you know it's not a word. BIPOC is not a word. It's an acronym. I don't even know why we don't put a dot between the letters. It's Black, Indigenous people of color, and people of color. It's an acronym. So you can't walk up and down saying, well, you're BIPOC, you're BIPOC, you're BIPOC. Like, you have to be careful. People are Black, they're brown, they're racialized, they're indigenous. There are many ways. And that is why we're having struggle with even the word BIPOC. So I know somebody said, ooh, Dr. Campbell, should I not use it? Yes, you can use it, but use the extended version as well. So you would say Black, Indigenous, people of color, you know, as we say BIPOC. I always make sure I phrase it out. Black, Indigenous, Black and Indigenous, and Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And then I also add to that other minoritized groups, or other equity-seeking groups, or other equity-deserving groups. Because right now there's a tension out there to say that BIPOC is not an inclusive term, and we know that. Deficit thinking undermines. We need to ensure that inclusivity is not enacted within a system, that inclusive is not enacted within a system organized according to deficit mentality. Remember the story I shared with you about grade 6? I'm going to stop this for a minute. Remember the story I shared with you about grade 6? I want you to understand that story I shared with you about grade 6. It was for a reason. That story I shared with you reminded all of us that when a child is placed in a certain grade, we automatically, even when we are great teachers, we automatically adjust our energies to say, well, because he's labeled, he's that grade, he won't need, and many times they are not offered the opportunities that they should be offered. So we have to be very careful. We have to be very careful, as we said, deficit thinking. As we said there, deficit thinking, it undermines. You see the word policy there, you see the word policy there. We believe that enacting or embracing a deficit mentality whilst dealing with difference undermines the most fundamental objective of inclusion, to fulfill the basic rights of all in an equitable manner. And that comes to us from John Portelli and Coney, 2018. A good piece of reading. So let's move on. What is the solution as we wrap up our session? What is our solution? The solution is strength, holding high expectations for all our students. And that comes to us from culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy that is embedded in culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. It's embedded in that idea that our students can do it. So we hold high expectations. I'm sure you've heard about the Pygmalion theory, where they said if you expect, there's experiment about that, the Pygmalion. If you expect, then they will. There's research done on it where teachers were giving students and were told that they were at a different level than they were at. And the teacher was like, well, if these are all A students, well, let me teach them like they're A student. Let me give them what I give A student. And she went on and gave them the best. And they did do well. And then afterwards, it would reveal that they were not A students, quote unquote. But our expectation from the first day of school says, you can do it. Imagine if a child made a mistake in her class. Imagine the kind of language. Let's get back to that. Imagine the kind of language she must be using. She must be saying, hey, you know better than this. You are amazing. What is this you're giving me? Go give me amazing. Take this back. There's a different attitude than when I started my first LTO in Canada in 2011. I was in a behavioral class and 6 little boys, they said to me, when I asked them the first day of LTO to write a story, they said, we can't write stories. I said to them, who told you so? And they said, the teacher. We can't write stories. We never write a story. We always write just a drawing or a picture. And I said, oh, you can write stories. I said, I could bet you anything that you could write stories. I went as far as betting them ice cream. I said, I'm going to bet you that you all could write stories. I was like, no, we can't. I was like, yes, you can. And we work at stories. We work with one sentence. Then we add a second sentence. Then we add a third sentence and a fourth sentence. And then when we were finished, we took about 2 days to do it. Oh, yes, we took about 2 days to do it. But when we reached our stories, they saw stories. They saw stories. They saw stories. They saw stories. So we want us to remember that we have to move to strength-based. That's what our answer is. Remember, these are not workshops. These are just our talks, our speaker series. So I want when you're finished here, you go ahead and do some work. That is why we're doing this. It's very intentional. There are going to be opportunities in the future, I guess, for workshops and in your school. And some of you right here are going to lead some of those workshops because you have the goods. But what I want to do is to motivate you and inspire you. I have been to workshops that when I was finished at the workshop, I just started Googling stuff and downloading stuff and looking for stuff. And that is what get me a little bit upset sometimes with us as educators. Somehow we are the most creative people. And when it comes to talking about equity, we become lazy and we have no idea. It's in us. It's in all of us. I'm going to wrap up with that. It's in all of us to move our students from deficit to strength-based approaches. We can move us from deficit to strength-based approach. And one of the most important strength-based approaches that I like, and I'm going to leave it to you, is the culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. The problem with this is that everybody thinks it means to put up a picture with a Black student on the wall and it get a bill with some indigenous work and say a poem that is written by a person who is racialized. It's that. Yes, it is. You are right. That is a part of it. That is a part of it. But that is not all of it. That is not all of it. One of the first tenets of deficit of culture relevant and responsive pedagogy is focus on our students' strength. Somehow we have forgotten the first tenet. There are 3 tenets. These are not the tenets. I must list in the considerations. But I can tell you one of the most important tenets is this: holding high expectations for our students. That in red is from CRRP. Holding high expectations. Strength-based, taking them to a level of strength-based. So remember, as we are moving and wrapping up today, we think about culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. We think about their strength. We focus on students' previous experiences, the cultural capital they bring to the school. They are not empty vessels. They come with something. Your job is to find out what it is. Your job is to dig deep and find out what they have that you can build with. Adopt alternative pedagogy. Some of us, we are lazy, you know. I can talk. 25 years of doing this. I get permission to say this. 25 years. I'm not the new kid on the block. I have seen teachers have used the same things for 15 years, 11 years, 9 years. I have seen a teacher I know in a school once that we almost had to beg her to throw away some of the old stuff that she's been using for years. Years. The same picture for years. The same photograph for years. We have just been using lazy. How are you getting new ideas? Are you open to new ways, new strategies? Look at this. Focus on language of hope. We need to talk about hope love, compassion more, and empathy. If you're a teacher and you do not love other people's children, you have absolutely no right teaching. We can love our own kids, that's fine. You get to love your own kids. That's fine. As teachers, we get to love other people's children. We get to teach and hold care for other people's children, creating your safe space where students can connect, acknowledging the uniqueness of your students, building on all of that. That is what we do. That is what we do. That is what we do as educators. I'm going to stop there and we're going to wrap up this. I just want to remind all of us the importance of setting high expectations, the importance of moving away from deficit thinking, the importance of teaching in strength-based approaches. That is the way it is supposed to be. And it's a journey. It's not going to happen in 1 minute. It's not going to happen in 1 day. It is a journey. It is a process. It is a process, sorry. But you have to be that one to say to the students, I see you. Many of our students feel like they are not seen. Many of our students have said it, I don't belong. We're still working on how do we create a more intentional spaces of belonging in our schools. So I want us to understand it is our job. I want you to understand as we close, it is your job. It is my job to teach from a place of strength. Teach from a place that say to our students on arrival, I see you. Say to our students on arrival, I see you. Say to our students on arrival, our actions, our attitude, our persona, our pedagogy, our practice, our planning, our mindset, our energy, our hugs, our touch, our arms, whatever we do, say to the students, I see you. Because I always say our students come to school to us. Without no teachers in the building, they would send their kids. Nobody send their children to a building. Nobody send the children to the walls. Nobody send the children to the playground. They send them to school to teach us. We are powerful people. We are powerful people. We can be a part of one of two things, the magic or the mess. I'm going to close with that. You can be a part of one of two things in your school as an educator. You get to be a part of the magic. You get to be a part of the mess. It is your choice. I hope and trust every one of us will choose the magic. We are powerful people. We make lives. We make children believe they can. That's how powerful we are. We make children know they can, and then we teach them like that. Telling them they can is one thing. Teaching them, knowing that they can, preparing them, giving that strength-based approach. That's the win. That's the win. And Kim, I'm going to close on your comment. Kim says, we are blessed to get to love other people's children.